Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray have a wide range of fantasy outlooks. They could be top 3 quarterbacks or fall outside the top 12. We talk through the top 6 toughest quarterbacks to rank on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy, betting, draft, all that good stuff for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Today, we're going to continue talking through the hardest players to rank. We've already done running backs and wide receivers this week. Now it's time to get into the quarterbacks. And no other than Patrick Mahomes. I mean, it's easy to rank him in actual NFL quarterback ranks, right? But when it comes to fantasy quarterbacks, it's very, very difficult because we've seen all sides of him throughout his career. We've seen him be, a top 3 quarterback multiple times, the quarterback 1, but the last 2 years, it hasn't been that. He was the quarterback 12 overall in 2024, quarterback 11 in average points per game, and then quarterback 14 in points per game in 2023. So it's been a couple years since he's been that top, fantasy quarterback. Right now, his consensus ranking is sitting at quarterback 7. That's too high for me, right? But it is hard to figure out where to put him because we know the upside. We know how good he is. It just hasn't come to fruition over the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, and partly it is because of the weapons being questionable and Travis Kelce having a little bit of a dip in his overall production. But does that all rise back up here? Because now all of a sudden things are trending up with this receiving core. You have Xavier Worthy. You have Rashee Rice. You've got now 2 veterans he can rely upon beyond Kelce and Marquise Hollywood Brown and Juju Smith-Schuster. For some reason, he just likes those guys, and Brown was not available. And we thought that could be a pretty good connection for much of last year, but it took a while for Brown to even be healthy and work his way into any kind of conversation there. So now you got these guys back. I think they still could add someone in the draft, maybe a back who's more capable of receiving the way that we saw with Jerick McKinnon or Damian Williams, one of those type of backs here, because their power running game is not that great. So I think they need to just say, we need to pass more. And then they had some issues on the inside as well. So we'll see how their new tackle plays out. Jalen Moore from the 49ers. So just, again, taking a shot there to see if a backup can be a starter. So, again, I think this team is going to pass quite a bit, and the weapons are starting to develop there. And what you need is the Chiefs to have games like they did in the Super Bowl where, hey, maybe they trail for a little bit. And Mahomes has got to dig deep, and he probably ran out of time, not having enough time to lead the comeback there. But we thought he was having a terrible Super Bowl. Fantasy-wise, it turned out to be a great Super Bowl because he was throwing to Worthy. Worthy exploded. So I think the key to unlocking him back to where he was, not saying he's going to put up 50 touchdowns again like his MVP season, but to get him above 40, I think are the 2 young receivers, Rice and Worthy.
Yeah, I think a big part of this is Rashee Rice. Does he get suspended? That will be key here because he needs both of these guys. The weapons have been struggling as of late, and they did re-sign Hollywood Brown, so maybe he's back healthy and maybe he had something. But Travis Kelce, another year older, that's not going to help. We've already seen him slow down greatly. But yeah, if he stays as this quarterback 7 or anywhere around there, I'm going to have trouble. Like, he won't be on any of my teams because I'm just not going to have him there. I'll have him. I mean, in our consensus rankings that we did, he was around quarterback 8 or so. And, I'll probably have him around 10. But I still think this defense is going to be very good. And I just don't buy into the weapons all that much. And it just really seems like the regular season to the Chiefs are just like, just got to skate by, like they just don't seem to be trying all that hard in the regular season compared to what they put on in the postseason. So he's definitely a hard one to rank. But the second half of his season, though, was much better than the first half. First half, 14.5 points per game. Second half, 20.2 points per game from weeks 9 through 18. Quarterback 8 in points per game during that span. So he did come back to life. Yeah. He still has it in him. It's just he needs teams to put competition on him, right? Like,
Yeah, I think
keep
that's the thing that you look at. I mean, like Baker Mayfield, I think if he can do it and finish tied for QB3 with Joe Burrow as a pocket passer, I think Mahomes can get up there. So I think that would be his absolute ceiling, right? I mean, you have to look at Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts, right? They're up there. Jaden Daniels. It's hard to put anyone above those three guys
and
because
Lamar.
of the way. Yeah, Lamar. Yeah, really. So you have 4 spots already there that are locked and accounted for. So you're starting already at QB5. So putting him at QB7 is pretty aggressive, right? But that said, I think he does have the biggest ceiling. I think his floor is okay, but I think his ceiling is always going to be huge. And that's why you always see Mahomes ranked this high. So look, I think it's going to be 50 people you ask, 25 will say he should be higher than 7. 25 will probably say he should be lower. So I think that's what puts him into this episode. So I think, again, the upside says I would much rather have him than the next guy we're about to talk about.
Yeah, and I think I would too. And the next guy is Kyler Murray. He was quarterback 10 overall, so a little bit higher than Patrick Mahomes. Quarterback 12 in points per game. He was a quarterback 10 in points per game in 2023 as well. Quarterback 7 in points per game in 2022 before tearing his ACL. Quarterback 4 in 2021 and quarterback 5 in 2020. So we've seen him have great fantasy seasons. We also saw him have great fantasy weeks this past year, right? It's not like it was a terrible year. It's just it was a very inconsistent year. He did have 20 fantasy points in 7 of 17 games played this year. Only one less such 20-point game than Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow had on the season. It's just the games that he didn't hit 20 points, they were pretty bad. It was just a very, very inconsistent year, and it was very hard to tell when he was going to have those good games or not. It wasn't just against the easiest teams. It was kind of sporadic. And then they didn't really change anything this offseason. Drew Petzing's still the OC. They didn't really add any weapons. So it's just kind of confusing to see how Murray's going to get better. I just think he's going to be that guy who gives you some big weeks and then also some really bad weeks as well.
Yeah, my problem here is he's not the cheat code quarterback we need him to be. I mean, he finished last year in average scoring lower than Patrick Mahomes. I mean, without the benefit of the running, Mahomes still finished ahead of him. And look, Mahomes can run a little bit, but that's where we're at with Kyler Murray is that for some reason he's not into running. I think he's doing some self-preservation. He doesn't want to be known as a running quarterback. He's kind of adamant that I need to be known as a passing quarterback to succeed. And there's always that lingering thing. Is he actually having fun out there, or is he just doing this job to go out because, you know, some of us have the ability to choose to play professional baseball or football at a high level. And he chose this one because I think it was going to end up being more fruitful for his checkbook. Now, the question is, what are we going to do with him going forward? Is he going to get in there and say, look, I need to run to do whatever I can to help my team win? I don't necessarily see that. And that is kind of hurtful in terms of his numbers, right? This should not be happening. He should be right up there with Daniels and Jackson in terms of his running. I mean, that's how good of a runner he is. But then you have James Conner cutting into it. They seem okay. Also, the Cardinals calling James Conner's number, and they'll probably lean on that running game again. And then we're not sure what we're going to get. Like Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like he can play the part better here, but I think Kyler Murray is just a guy that, look, you're not going to bang the table for and target in many drafts. Where I think Mahomes, you might do that because he is Mahomes, and we know how high he can end up. But Kyler Murray, look, those days of maybe getting you QB 6, 7, it's not worth it to take a shot on him for limited upside.
Yeah, it's not. He'd be a great streamer option, you know, but he's going to be drafted. Right now, his consensus rank is quarterback 9, a little too high for me. I'm going to have him a little bit lower than that, but he is definitely a hard guy because we do know the upside. If he does all of a sudden start running a bunch next year, right? He's more confident in that knee as he keeps getting further and further away from the injury. Then he's going to exceed this quarterback 9 ranking easily. It's just I have to see it, and it's just so hard without them changing the OC. I do think Drew Petzing gets fired in the middle of the 2025 season. That's just what I'm calling. And then maybe it'll be better after that. We have 4 more quarterbacks we have to get through of the toughest rankings for the 2025 season. We'll do that right after a quick break. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Gametime app. Buying tickets to your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. You get a panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. You get to buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantee, and even job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Just download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms to apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. All right, if anyone is watching on YouTube, this next toughest guy to rank, he's on the back of my wall here in a big sticker. Brock Purdy, quarterback 12 in consensus rankings right now. Maybe I'm just biased. I think it's too low, but I do also think it's very hard to rank him right now because last year in a down year, he was quarterback 10 in fantasy points per game, quarterback 7 in points per game in 2023. That was his first season as a starter. It was a slow build for him in the season, in the beginning of the season, but week 6 through 17, he was averaging 19 points per game during that span. He didn't play week 18, and that was with 2 massive bus games, both of them in terrible weather, heavy snow, heavy rain. So I do still think he's a good fantasy quarterback, and he did that last year without Christian McCaffrey, without Brandon Ayuk for a huge chunk of it, without Trent Williams for a huge chunk of it, without Ricky Pearsall for the first half of the season, plus with dealing with a throwing shoulder injury for a good chunk of those games too. And I do think the 49ers defense is going to be pretty brutally bad next year. So all that to say, I do think Brock Purdy could finish high, but the weapons are still a concern. And then the mobility isn't up there with some of the others.
Yeah, I think Brock Purdy is one of those quarterbacks. He could go through an entire season with a perfect passer rating, win the Super Bowl, and some people would still criticize Brock Purdy. And I've talked about this a lot because everyone's worried about his contract. I mean, no one worried about giving Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert the big
Jordan
money
Love.
or Jordan, any of these guys, right? I mean, Tua even. So he's got more success than any of those guys. And look, you can't keep blaming him for what's around him, but then you have to give him kind of credit for not just bottom dropping out last year with all those issues, right? Brandon Ayuk was his go-to guy. He had a big season 2 years ago, not available for much of the time there. Deebo Samuel was fading and clearly moving on after the season. So he was pretty much sitting on George Kittle. He made it work. And I think people forgot that Juwan Jennings, look, is he a super elite receiver? No, but in the system, and Brock Purdy getting the ball, like he was productive when those guys were down. So you can't forget about Jennings. He's got a great relationship with Kittle. I think you look at Ayuk. We talked about Ricky Pearsall and what he could do as a new threat in this offense and maybe even help him push the field downfield a little bit more, right? I mean, than Samuel could at this stage in his career. So again, I think the arrow's pointing up. Then you have the injury on the offensive line. Trent Williams has been banged up last couple of years, and when Williams hasn't been there, Purdy's had taken a little bit of hit, but he should have at least one more good year. I think they'll look to upgrade the rest of their offensive line here. I think they're very much attached to one of the tackles, Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks early in the draft, right? So they should upgrade tackle on the other side away from Trent Williams. This should be a better offensive line. He should be better protected, and he's got the weapons. And they even brought back Kyle Juszczyk, and don't forget, Christian McCaffrey could be healthy as well. So all these things, that elements that added up for him having a big fantasy breakout season in 2023 are back, and he wasn't terrible in 2024 either. So he should not be ranked 2 spots lower than what he finished last year.
No, these were his games from week 16 or week 6 through 17. 24 points, 17, 26, 24, 18. That terrible 2-point game in Buffalo in the blizzard. 22 points, that terrible 4-point game in the downpour. 21 points, 30 points. Like consistently good outside of those terrible weather games. I do think he's a really good fantasy quarterback. I do think this defense is going to be lacking this year, and they're going to need to put up a lot of points. So I like Brock Purdy this year, but it's still hard to know where to put him, especially with not knowing when Ayuk will be back not knowing if Christian McCaffrey will make it through the year. It's still a difficult ranking. Now, my next one is Baker Mayfield. He's sitting at quarterback 6 in consensus rankings right now. And you're like, okay, he was the quarterback 4 overall and in points per game last year behind only Lamar, Josh Allen, and Joe Burrow, are basically tied with Joe Burrow. But massive outlier year for Baker, right? So this is what we have to figure out. Was last year his new norm? Or, I mean, this is the first year he was even a top 12 fantasy quarterback. So massive outlier year in terms of passing touchdown production at 41 passing yards, but also in terms of rushing. All of a sudden, he scrambled like crazy and more than doubled any of his other seasons in rushing yards, had 3 rushing touchdowns as well. And, you know, he has another new OC, but the defense should still be bad. He has awesome playmakers around him. And if the scrambling keeps it up, then who knows? But I do think the quarterback 6 ranking might be a little bold, but that is also where we had him in our consensus rankings. It's hard to figure out what to do with Baker.
Yeah, I mean, putting it at 6 is actually a downgrade of a little bit here. So really what you have to do is start separating which are the mobile quarterbacks, the cheat code quarterbacks we want to target. You can start with the Hurts, Allen, Daniels, Jackson. Okay, those guys are out of the way, and then you figure out, okay, let's stack the board with Burrow as my top pocket passer. Then how do we fit in the rest of these guys behind him? And that basically comes out of the group of Mahomes. We talked about Purdy being in that group as well. Then do we see this from a new person like Justin Herbert breaking through in that offense? And then you look at now Baker Mayfield. But you're right. He added a little bit more juice with his running ability, which is all good signs for Trevor Lawrence under Liam Cohen. Now, we've seen Baker respond in 2 different new offenses. Really, it's consistently a new offense for Baker Mayfield, going from Cleveland to Carolina to Tampa. Just always something new he's trying to absorb. So can you keep it up? I mean, it's really hard to duplicate the 40-plus touchdowns. It's really hard. I mean, Mahomes even couldn't do it, right? When he had the 50, he came back down to earth. So it's very hard to duplicate these numbers. Like, he could probably end up with 35, which would be fine. And then that would put him right there in the middle of the QB1. So I think that's where you look at him. I think QB6 maybe a little too rich, given that there's some other guys that might carry upside and are not just relegated to their pocket production. Again, I would expect some slide of those numbers without Cohen and just a general regression here. So again, 6 to 8, I think makes a lot of sense for Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, and like I was like, were there just a few games that were such outlier games that it just really skewed his numbers? And really, no, there's only 3 bad games all year long, and they're kind of spread out. So he was just a really, really good fantasy quarterback last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to see him replicate that, but it's also hard not to rank him up there because it's like all these other guys right around that same area also have question marks, and Caleb Williams and Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, who we just talked about, and Kyler Murray, like all of them are kind of in the same situation where it's like you can see it going many different ways. So it's hard not to have Baker kind of sitting there at 6, but I don't think by the time the offseason keeps going on that he's going to be sitting there at 6 for me. I do expect there to be a bit of a fall off. We have 2 more quarterbacks to get through, Jordan Love and Bryce Young, as the last 2 toughest quarterbacks to rank for 2025. All right, let's finish up today's show of Locked On Fantasy Football. I want to thank everyone for making us your first listen every day. We have 2 more quarterbacks to talk through that are the toughest to rank for 2025 fantasy drafts. And our 5th guy is Jordan Love, who right now is sitting as a quarterback 13 in consensus rankings. He was a quarterback 17 in 2024, quarterback 6, though, in 2023, his first year as a starter. Last year, there's a lot of reasonings you could give to why he fell off, right? He sprained his MCL on the final drive in week 1, missed a couple games, and then he suffered a groin injury in week 8, played through that. Like it was just he was injured for most of the year. And that second half of the season, once he had that groin injury, it really fell apart. Like he wasn't too bad to start the year. It was up and down with 16 points, 28, 16, 25, 17. But after that, from weeks 8 through 18, he averaged 13 fantasy points per game. Really, really bad. Now, shockingly, his pass touchdown percentage went up last year. It was 5.9 in 2024, 5.5 in 2023. I think that's reasonable to stay right around there in that 25 to 30 passing touchdown range. But he needs to start running, right? he's offering none of that, especially last year. Only 83 rushing yards last year. He did have 247 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023. But that's the concern, right? He has the ability, I think. If he starts running, he could be a better quarterback. But I don't even know if I want to put him at quarterback 13 with what he showed us last year.
Yeah, Michelle, if you just look at that running alone and doing some rough, quick math here, that's about, I'd say, close to 45, 50 points, right? Just from those touchdowns and that rushing yardage. So, I mean, that is kind of insane, like that you would give up that much, but that's how it is. You kind of have to just look at the numbers, right? And anytime a guy is inflated, we've seen this with Trevor Lawrence and other quarterbacks. Some people get inflated quickly by the rushing totals, and they're sneaky. You have to look at them, and you have to examine, is this anomalous here? Is this really a, quote, running quarterback? Especially guys who get the random amount of touchdowns, right? When the rushing touchdowns, unless you're Allen or Hurts, they're not just a common every week occurrence, right? They're kind of a little bit random for the rest of the quarterback. So you take that element out, and then he's limited as a pocket passer. Then there's questions about his weapons. And I think I'd like to put Jordan Love higher than he is. He's around 13 or 14 now, but I need to see what the Packers do in the draft. I mean, I'm not going to buy it with just this group of receivers. I mean, Luke Musgrave got hurt, so Tucker Kraft had to step up. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs seemed perpetually hurt. Dontavian Wicks flashed, but didn't really do anything. Then you have Jayden Reed, who has his issues up and down, making plays sometimes or disappearing from the offense. So I mean, it's just really hard to want to invest in this Packers offense beyond Josh Jacobs at this point. Because again, I don't know how healthy all these guys are going to be. I don't know how settled Jordan Love is going to be. I think the jury's still a little bit out on his production and performance going forward. So again, I am just very wary, and he has been going down boards. I think everyone else has similar thoughts here. So again, I think QB13 is a little too rich for me. I definitely think he should be down there with the QB2s, well out of the top 12.
Yeah, I don't like guys who don't have like super high upside, and I just don't see that out of Jordan Love as like for a full season of top 5 upside. But we'll see what they do in the draft. If they finally will draft a wide receiver in the first round and get Jordan Love a true wide receiver 1 and make Jayden Reed kind of that slot, player where he's not relied on to be the wide receiver 1, and then maybe Christian Watson can ever stay healthy, right? There's a way there where he has the weapons. And also, like, he has the mobility, he just refuses to do it. But maybe, LaFleur will ask him to do it more this year. But yeah, he's not really a guy I'm going to be too hyped about ever wanting to draft. And right now I have him at quarterback 16. That's probably too low. I don't see, again, it's just hard right now. We'll see what they do in the draft, and then maybe I will move him up. Our last guy, Bryce Young. Right now, sitting at consensus quarterback 26. I'm sure that will end up going up, I feel like, by the time we get to draft, but very, very low for him. I think he's hard to rank because I'm getting too high on him, right? It's like, how high is too high? Should he be ranked as a top 12 guy? Because we saw at the end of last year, he really started to come together in that Dave Canales offense after being benched from weeks 10 through 18. In that 8-game span, he averaged 19.7 points per game. So right there at 20 points per game, quarterback 10 on average during that span. And during that span of 8 games, he was on a 17-game pace for 36 total touchdowns and over 400 rushing yards too. He was starting to use his legs. So I think he showed us something. And also, like, second year with Canales, hopefully they add more weapons in the draft. The young weapons he does have, they'll be second-year players too, or have more experience. So I really like Bryce Young. And as long as he keeps running and being productive like he was at the end of last season, he intrigues me a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you're just looking at the bottom line as the numbers. I just don't see in anywhere where he just drops down there to Cam Ward. Like, we don't even know where Cam Ward is going, but we're presuming the Titans, and we're still thinking that Cam Ward is about the same level as Bryce Young. I mean, he could take the same lumps in his first year. And when you look at this, I mean, Dave Canales, I think, putting things together, I would expect them to add a couple more weapons. I think they solidified, again, the running game with Chuba Hubbard and figuring things out behind him. And then you look at, again, they have some veterans there with Adam Thielen. They've got a little bit of tight end, but I think they're going to upgrade more here in the draft at wide receiver. That would be a huge help to this team, just getting another legit, maybe number 1 weapon. Is it Tedero McMillan in the first round? Is it a bunch of guys that can help this offense and bring them together for Canal. So if that's the case, if he gets McMillan or another clear young go-to guy here in this draft, then automatically you're going to feel a lot better about Bryce Young. And he does give you, he's not a pure cheat code quarterback, never going to be that, but he can pad his stats with running a little bit more than maybe some contemporaries like we think run, like Tua, who doesn't run at all. And he could, but I think this is a guy that will if he needed to, right? So there's a way to get some numbers there. He's very confident now. They didn't bench him anymore. Like, he's the guy for sure. So he's not going to look over his shoulder. He's fully developed. And again, I think the Panthers defense, look, it was historically bad last year. It can't be that much better. So I think you're going to see a lot of chucking from this team. And Bryce Young, I think, is ready and there for it, and I think he can handle it. So, again, drafting him outside the top 24 as a QB3 just seems ridiculous to me after we know how he ended the season. That's a lot of things you look at. What did they do in the last 5 to 6 weeks? And Bryce Young was definitely more viable in fantasy than that.
Yeah, I mean, he's a decent amount behind CJ Stroud, Drake May, Michael Penix Jr. Even he's behind Geno Smith. He's behind right now in consensus rankings. I 100% know I want Bryce Young more than those guys. I think when it starts to get hard, it's like, do I want Bryce Young or do I want Jared Goff? Right? Like, which way do I go? Do I want Bo Nix or do I want Bryce Young? Like, who am I going to take the chance on? And that's when it becomes super difficult for me. It's like, how high is too high? Right now, I have him at quarterback 15. And I don't know if I feel good or bad about that.
Well, I think the one thing you can do is you should stash that away, right? Knowing that you can get that. Maybe if you're not interested in those other quarterbacks, and you know for sure that people are going to draft them higher, let them go off the board and just wait and say, look, I'm still going to get a value for this guy. So some guys we don't want coming out as a best kept secret, and people just learn about them, and then in your drafts especially, and then all of a sudden you have to reach a lot higher. I mean, when I say reach, I'm not saying you're going for a player that isn't good, but just making a pick that you're making a lot earlier than you would like to there to get that value in a player. So again, he's a great value right now. It's unbeatable. They're down at QB 26, but just be careful again. If you're tired of those middle guys that Michelle was talking about, Goff or even like a Trevor Lawrence, if you're not enthused about those guys, just let them pass and go after this guy as your QB2. And I think he's going to make a lot of people in Superflex and 2 QB pretty happy this season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We will be back tomorrow finishing up our toughest players to rank for 2025 with the tight end position. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.